We are absolutely making enemies of every place in the world. India and China and Russia gotten much closer together, absolutely pushed by the United States into their embrace.
Jeffrey Sachs recently went on Judge Napolitano's show to explain how Trump has alienated the entire world, how Trump's actions on the foreign policy stage, not only in the Middle East, but also in Ukraine, have pushed the BRICS alliance closer together and could spell disaster for the United States. So let's get his take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
We see President Trump's approval ratings falling very significantly. We're all in the same situation. Let's not forget the United States government is hemorrhaging deficits right now. We have an unprecedented deficit that will be around 7% of GDP in peacetime next year. Why? Because President Trump was so absolutely insistent on tax cuts for the rich, and he continues to say we need bigger military spending. Whatever he says about war and peace and everything else, he's for big defense, or it's not defense spending anymore, it's war spending now. I have to get our lingo correct. He wants the Department of War to have bigger budgets. Well, this is what's happening all across the so-called West.
Yeah, he's right about the defense budget. It is the war budget, and they boast about the fact that it's the first $1 trillion Pentagon budget, $150 billion more than Biden's biggest one, but I don't agree with them on tax cuts. The big beautiful bill imposed $5 trillion more in terms of debt spending, which will be offset by financing that through inflation, which is a tax. This is a tax-raising regime, not only through inflation and the guaranteed inflation to come from that monstrous bill, but also the tariff regime. That's taxation, too. That's taxes Americans pay. I know they like to sell it in the media like we're taxing China, or we're taxing Russia, we're taxing India, stupidly, especially in that last case. But this is a tax that Americans pay. And yeah, you can say that the big abominable bill prolonged the Bush or the Trump tax cuts from his first term, but that's already what Americans were paying in terms of the bracket. So that's no change from the status quo. So there isn't any tax cuts for the rich, I'm sorry to say here. There's taxes for everyone increasing because of this Trump regime.
It makes no sense at all. And we see it in Germany, the United States, France, UK, and there are a number of others that I could add.
The State Department over the weekend announced that it will scrutinize carefully all requests for visas from Latin American countries if it believes that the visa requester had made any public statements in support of China. I don't get it. We're barring all Palestinians, from Mahmoud Abbas to kids with no legs who could get prosthetics here in New York City. Now we're going to bar people from Latin America because of their expression of statements exercising the freedom of speech in their own home countries?
We are absolutely making enemies of every place in the world. By the way, a raid on a Korean investment in the United States, which rounded up Korean workers, has led also to a crisis with the Korean government.
Yeah, and also killing 11 people that were supposedly drug runners in that boat, and agitating for regime change with Venezuela, with Pete Hegseth saying regime change isn't off the table. Yeah, Sachs is right. The United States sure is making enemies in every corner of the world, and this is a president that generally campaigned on non-interventionism. in ending the war in Ukraine, into not getting in senseless neocon-style conflicts with foreign powers. Well, that's what you get when you surround yourself with the likes of Marco Rubio and Mike Huckabee and Miriam Adelson funding your campaign. That's the natural result. It's an embrace of the war regime, an embrace of the military-industrial complex, and the slap in the face to the American people.
We have violations of all the international principles of people being able to come for peaceful diplomacy at the United Nations. We're shooting people out of the water, no trials, no evidence needed, just to shoot first in the Caribbean waters. Our ally in Japan, which is wondering whether the United States is an ally. The prime minister also just fell. In other words, political instability everywhere that the United States aggravates everywhere. Or I should put it a different way. Political instability throughout the countries that ostensibly are cooperative with the United States. The ones we call adversaries, they're not unstable. They're actually getting together and saying, this is what we need to do in the face of abuse from the United States.
Yeah, the worst one is India, and I can't believe how preposterous this decision was to levy a 50% tariff on Indian goods because India dares to trade with Russia. India was a country headed by an individual, Modi, that was close with Trump. They seemed to have a really good relationship in Trump's first term, and now Trump is doing everything he can to alienate India at a time that he could masterfully try to extract India from BRICS by building closer relations with India, but instead, just like Russia, he's pushing India closer into the BRICS alliance that is characterized by three major nuclear powers in India, China, and Russia. This is one of the stupidest foreign policy decisions Trump has ever made, and I don't say that lightly because there have been many, but it's something that's being undercovered. And the fact that India is being pushed closer into BRICS is a preposterous thing for the America First mentality, where you actually want to have peace with countries that don't want to do you wrong, that want to trade with you and have diplomacy, and you slap them in the face with this stupid tariff, which, again, Americans will pay, but they won't take kindly to it either because they're going to just be pushed closer to BRICS and trade more with BRICS partners now.
But what we are doing is isolating the United States in diplomatic terms, in economic terms, actually in financial terms, because we're hastening the departure of the rest of the world from the dollar-based trading system, because they don't want the unilateral sanctions, they don't want the unilateral tariff impositions and every other thing. And yet the White House continues to talk that, yes, we'll put on even more sanctions. Extraordinarily, what Trump has said to the European leaders, is that, well, you should stop buying even the residual amounts of oil and gas that you buy from Russia and buy it from us at 6 times the cost. He's an arms salesman and he's a natural gas salesman, and this is what we call governance in the United States.
Since his disastrous imposition of a 50% secondary tariff on India and the now public reaction of Prime Minister Modi, how strong has the BRICS SCO group become economically vis-a-vis the West?
The BRICS are the large emerging economies that say we don't get bossed around by the United States. So that includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Trump has gone after each one of those
And Syria and Iran. Syria toppled the regime by the United States with the help from Israelis and the Turks under Operation Timber Sycamore, where the U.S. allied with Al Qaeda for the sake of Israel and Netanyahu, and Iran that the United States struck because of Netanyahu's obsession with regime change there. We created a new war there. There's a ceasefire now, but Israeli officials are clamoring for more war against Iran now. They want to destabilize that regime in the sake of greater Israel, too. These are BRICS countries, too, and the U.S. is doing everything they can to strengthen the BRICS alliance. My criminal government is doing the most America-last thing by incentivizing these countries to get closer together. And it might not be a huge issue now to a lot of people, but if they create an alternative currency and the US dollar stops being the world reserve currency, that's a huge economic catastrophe for the United States beyond the geopolitical ramifications in three great nuclear powers aligning against the United States.
With Brazil, there the penalty tariffs are because Trump didn't like a judicial process underway in an independent Brazilian judiciary against a coup attempt claimed by the former president. So he put on tariffs on Brazil. On Russia, we know. On India, these are the penalty tariffs, so-called, because India buys oil from Russia, as does Europe, as does much of the world, as we do with uranium and other purchases from Russia. But he put the tariffs on. With China, we know it's a whole panoply of unilateral actions with South Africa. We also saw the abuse of South Africa by our government. So that's been after each of the BRICS.
Yeah, the United States, again, is doing things totally counterintuitive to actual America First interests and trading with all, engaging with peace and diplomacy with all, and entangling alliances with none. You know, the mantra that Jefferson championed in his first inaugural address, which should be the American doctrine toward foreign policy. John Quincy Adams once applauded America for its most redeeming quality was it doesn't go overseas to search for monsters to destroy. But the last century has shown a very different tale, I hate to say.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is the Asian grouping. It has some overlap. It includes China, India, Russia, and then 4 Central Asian countries, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, and Belarus. They just had their meeting in Tianjin, China. They were all pulled together by Trump administration actions against those countries as well. And so there was a great deal of camaraderie. There was the famous pictures we've seen in recent days of Prime Minister Modi of India, President Putin of Russia, and President Xi Jinping of China, all together, very jovial, very cooperative, absolutely pushed by the United States into their embrace.
Yeah, absolutely. This should horrify Americans, not because China and Russia and India are preparing to attack the United States, but the long-term ramifications of those 3 giant countries with huge populations, all nuclear powers, getting closer in alignment is something that should get far more coverage. This is a major disaster. And it's a major disaster for the Trump administration to, again, push India closer to the other 2 when it could have extracted India from that alliance, much like Nixon extracted China from, Soviet communism in the 1970s. Nixon was a disaster in so many ways in foreign policy, but it really was a good idea to create a schism that was deeper between the Soviet Union and China, even though one already existed at that time.
So whatever the U.S. may think it's doing, it is bringing down our allied governments, so-called allies. One after another of these governments is falling, whether it is France or Japan or governments put at threat like Korea, because of U.S.-Korea tensions, or the absolutely plummeting approval of the other countries that I'd mentioned, or it is strengthening greatly the various groupings of countries that say stop with the unilateral punishments and sanctions and demands and penalties that the United States is putting on us.
Yeah, this is a good point. The converse and the flip side to pushing the BRICS alliance countries closer is the fact that the globalists, the Marises and Macrons and Starmers and Vanderlands of the world, have record low approval rating. I think that I just saw Macron's approval rating was something like 50 or 20%, something like that. Starmer suffering greatly, mayors just being destroyed, all of which are hardcore NATO supporting countries dedicated to fighting it out in Ukraine, or at least saying that they will. I don't think they would if the United States were to disengage, which I hope still happens, but nothing's telling me that's going to happen. That's the flip side here. You see disastrous leaders on the NATO side.
If you look at Asia, I think not only have India and China and Russia gotten much closer together during these days of the first year of the Trump administration because of U.S. policies, but Japan and Korea certainly are reevaluating their own security issues as well. And I am absolutely of the view that basically the Asian countries will say, Asia is for the Asian countries and the United States should stop its meddling. And this is perhaps the opposite of what the administration thinks it's doing, but this is the absolute clear result of the policies that the administration is following.
Yeah, totally agree. I think they know what they're doing, though. They know this will antagonize the rest of the world. They just have to sell it because it might prove lucrative in the future to have more proxy wars against these powers, against India, against China, against Russia, funneling money from the middle class, fleecing the middle class in the United States, and sending it to the big banks and the military-industrial complex to keep providing weapons. That's exactly what's on the table with this new proxy war idea. Instead of a proxy war, we'll just add another layer above it and send weapons first to the European powers, and then the European powers will send them to Ukraine, and then Ukraine will use them to fight the Russians. This doesn't solve anything. It's a cop-out, and it isn't America first. This is empire building first. This is Ukraine first. This is entangling alliances first. This is empire building first. We want none of it. I'm so sick of U.S. foreign policy being so bad and disastrous, regardless of the administration in power. And don't get me wrong, Biden was no different. Bush was no different. And that is a big problem in and of itself, that Trump campaigned so heavily and so hard against neocons, including Liz Cheney in his last week of his last campaign in 2024. But he sure does seem to embrace the foreign policy of Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney much of the time. You know, talking about regime change being on the table in Venezuela now. Just like he did talk about regime change being on the table with Iran. When he bombed Yemen for a month, when he bombed Iran, when he keeps the money flowing into Ukraine, as some liberal Democrats still think he's a Putin agent working for Putin in the United States. It's so preposterous, but this lie has been sold over and over through a grand propaganda scheme that we're in it for democracy, we're in it to spread liberal values throughout the world, we're in it for the good of humanity against this Hitlerian empire that Putin is trying to form as we speak. It's all a farce, it's all preposterous, and it needs to change. Let me know down below, do you agree with Jeffrey Sachs? Is Trump pushing the BRICS countries closer together? What are the long-term ramifications of this for the U.S.? Let me know down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Napolitano 2. Great podcast. Also consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support the channel, and in return, I'll give you access to all of my videos that are members only before they go live to the general public. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.